The draft is happening today, and in case you're wondering, I'm projected to go in the 8th round to Baltimore.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I've been an Emmy-nominated television producer and a comedian, a lot of other things, but I've mainly been a baseball podcaster. And for the last 6 years, I've been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade, but for the last 6 years, I've been here at the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm doing double duty this year because I'm doing every episode of Locked On MLB all year long. And since the start of the season, I've been the host of Locked On A's because, well, you know what? There was no host for Locked On A's. And this is too weird a year to not have a host on Locked On A's. So I said, get out of my way. Hold my beer. I'll do Locked On A's too. And I've been doing exactly that. By the way, for what it's worth, I'm really enjoying doing 2 podcasts a day. But if any of you know of a good A's podcast or a good A's fan who might be a good fit here at the Locked On Podcast Network, let us know. Let us know. We'd love to have them on and maybe give them who knows, they may join the podcast family as well. I'm saying I'm having a lot of fun this year. I may not do 2 next year, so we'll see what happens here. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now. You can find same handle for Instagram. You can find me. I'm your pal Sully, but Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And if you're following us every single day on either show, make sure to use that hashtag #EverydaySully. It helps us know who's following us, when, where, and also why. Hey, today's episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you the fan of any city, even your rival city. So visit Booking.com for your stay today. All right, today is indeed the draft. And Travis Bazzana is expected to be the number 1 pick overall. He's a infielder from Oregon State University. I believe he's from Australia. He was a cricket player. He's also big at the Cape Cod League. You know, you have the number 1 pick overall. You should get someone who is going to be a tremendous building block. You know, the Guardians are in first place and have the number 1 pick overall. That's happened a couple of times where a team has one of the top picks and then also is a big time contender. And you would think that would be a glorious situation. You know, you think that'd be a situation like, oh my God, they're already great, and then they're going to bring in a superstar. And for whatever reason, it seldom works out. It's Darko Milicic syndrome. I can't claim to be a huge basketball fan, but you remember in that draft that included LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, and there were a couple of, I don't know basketball as well, but there was Carmelo Anthony. There was a lot of like big stars, like huge franchise stars that were going to be in that first round. And the Detroit Pistons, who were, if they were in back-to-back NBA finals at that time, and were a tremendous team, and they picked Darko Milicic to be their number 1 pick. They didn't get LeBron, but they passed up Dwayne Wade and Carmelo Anthony, and there's a couple other ones, and I'm sure basketball fans are screaming at me right now. But it was like, Pistons, why did you pick that guy? You could have had a legit superstar, and it didn't work out. Well, it's happened in baseball too. Like the Rays had the number 1 pick overall and were going on to the 2008 World Series, and they passed on Buster Posey and a couple other players. And they wound up picking Tim Beckham, who made it to the majors, but was hardly a star. And even when he was made it to the majors, he was not great. And there have been a couple other instances where the Dodgers won the World Series in 19 88 and 1989, they had like 4 picks in the first round. They whiffed on all of them. The A's won the World Series in 89. They were able to take Todd Van Poppel, who was the top pitching prospects, and 3 other top pitching prospects in the first round. It looked like the greats were going to get greater, and all their draft picks whiffed, and they had a chance to draft Mike Mussina, and they passed. So it doesn't, we say, wow, the Guardians are great, and they're going to add a superstar. Well, that goes against the grain. That goes against the grain. That goes against what history shows us. Whereas Travis Bazzana is supposed to be the number 1 pick. And again, going over the draft is always a little odd because, a lot of these players won't see the light of day in the major league uniform. Paul Skeens could be drafted. Next thing you know, we start in the All-Star game. David Price could be drafted. And he's in college at the beginning of the year, and by October, standing on the mound, clinching the American League Championship Series. That sometimes happens. But most of the times they get drafted, and even the top prospects don't show up in the major leagues for like a year or so. And if you're a high school prospect, it'll be 3 or 4 years before you would become a September call-up. Charlie Condon is a top prospect, Golden Spikes winner from Georgia. Outfielder, probably going to go to the Reds. This is all, I'm just going by a bunch of the mock drafts. The Rockies, the only way the Rockies can build a pitching staff is through the draft because no one in their right mind would sign there as a free agent. So they're probably going to go with Wake Forest pitcher Chase Burns. Our condolences, Chase Burns. The Oakland A's have the number 4 pick overall, and the projection seemed to be an outfielder named Braden Montgomery from Texas A&M. So you see that a lot of college picks are going on here. The White Sox are probably going to pick Jack Caglianone, who is a pitcher, first baseman for Florida. The Royals are projected to pick Hagen Smith from Arkansas, another college pitcher. The Cardinals are going to probably pick a infielder named J.J. Weatherholt from West Virginia. You don't get a high school player until the Angels pick. This is just, again, I'm going by some of the mock drafts here. Bryce Rainier, who is a local player from California. The Angels are probably going to draft him out of high school. The Pirates are going to probably going to go for a college hitter, Nick Wirtz from Wake Forest. The Nats will probably get a college pitcher, Trey Yesevich from East Carolina. It's funny. I'm saying names. High school infielder Connor Griffin to the Tigers. Christian Moore, college second baseman to the Red Sox from Tennessee. The Giants, Cam Caminiti from a high school pitcher out of Arizona. Cam Smith. Cam is a big name. Third baseman out of Florida State's projected to go to the Cubs. James Tibbs to the Marlins, and outfielder Ryan Waldschmidt of Kentucky to the Brewers. These names don't mean anything to me. I'm not the big prospect guy. I'm not the big draft guy. And it's funny that I should take a look at any podcasts I did 10 years ago about the draft then, and I wonder how many names I just casually mentioned who are big stars, and how many names that I mentioned as, oh man, this is going to be a great pick for this team or that. It's a weird, for the lack of a better word, act of futility to take a look at the draft at this point. Can't miss players, miss badly. Players who are picked up like late in the draft could become Mike Trout. And it's a coin toss. But I want to go back in the second segment. We're going to go back 10 years. We're going to go back 10 years to the 2014 draft. And we're going to take a look at the draft with 10 years of, for the lack of a better word, 10 years of perspective, and see that some teams drafted quite well, thank you very much. Some teams picked up big stars, thank you very much. Some teams drafted players and then shipped them away in trades, thank you very much. And then, lo and also behold, 2 bizarre what-ifs right at the top of the rotation exist that are worth, I don't know, contemplating or maybe even thinking about what could have been done and how things could have been done just a little differently. Hey, let's talk a little bit about our friends over at FanDuel. Now, look, there's not as many sports as there were just a few weeks ago. I mentioned basketball. I like watching basketball. I'm not a huge basketball fan like I was before, but I love watching that. I love watching hockey playoffs. Yeah, they're all gone. The Olympics are going to start soon. Football hasn't started yet. We got baseball. We don't have as many sports as I like, but FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app, dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for someone, for anyone, every day. And you can head over to FanDuel and start making the most of your summer. Come up with the best bets, take on the best odds, and go to FanDuel. FanDuel is an official betting partner of Major League Baseball. FanDuel, it's time to keep those sports going. By the way, if you're following us, you know that PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. They have more than 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more than or less than and 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. You can turn $10 into $1,000 because you can win 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as few as 4 correct picks. And PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. So download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDON for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDON on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less on PrizePicks. It's always that easy. Hey, where do you go for your hub? Where's your center for getting your baseball, sports, and all other sport news? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel. Program for you every day, bringing the biggest stories in sports. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, takes, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. 10 years ago, the Astros had the #1 pick overall, and they were already building up a terrific team. And with the #1 pick overall, they could have added one big, huge, honking superstar to the middle of their team. And as we all know, in 2014, they got that first pick overall. By 2015, they were back in the playoffs. By 2017, they grabbed their trash can and went to the World Series. Astros fans, come at me. That is what happened. But beyond the trash can, they were already an excellent baseball team with stars budding in there. And the Altuve was already an all-star. And the people like Bregman and Correa were percolating in their system. And a bunch of shrewd trades were building up the farm. Now they had the #1 pick overall. Now, when you take a look at that draft, some of the top players in that draft included Trey Turner, Matt Chapman, Aaron Nola. Those are the 3 best picks as it turned out. You also had Kyle Schwarber in there, who may not have been one of the top picks, but certainly has become a fan favorite, a superstar, and a World Series champion. You had Michael Conforto, Kyle Freeland. You also had Eric Fede, who's turned into a terrific pitcher, and Jack Flaherty, who's had his moments. These were all players who were available for that #1 pick. Also available were some second-round picks were still there. I'll bring it up that the Alex Verdugos, the Mitch Kellers, and the Spencer Turnbulls were all still available. In other words, they all became, major leaguers, which you would hope to get with the #1 pick overall. Brian Anderson and J.D. Davis were still available in the 3rd round. And the 4th round, were there any major leaguers picked in the 4th round? Well, there were a couple. Logan Webb and Jordan Montgomery were all, and Austin Gomber, all available with that #1 overall pick. And the Astros had the number 1 pick overall. And what did they do with it? They drafted Brady Aiken from a high school pick. And Brady Aiken did not sign. Now, they wound up getting money and this and that and compensation picks. But imagine if they had drafted the likes of an Aaron Nola, or if they had Kyle Schwarber, or a Trey Turner, or someone like that. Yeah, it's hard to imagine the Astros being better than they've been, but yeah, they could have been. They could have been a little bit better. They could have had, I mean, Nola's, I think, the most intriguing one because he's become an ace caliber pitcher, and he would have been inserted into the Astros narrative. The number 2 pick overall is the other one that's more agonizing because the Marlins picked Tyler Kolek. Tyler Kolek, again, a high school player, got a $6 million bonus, which used to get you an entire Bionic Man. But in 2014, it got you Tyler Kolek. Tyler Kolek became the number 52 overall prospect, but I think that was out of respect. He was in the Gulf League. He pitched a little bit out of high school. Then he was in the Sally League in 2015. Didn't pitch particularly well. He missed all of 2017 because of injury. He barely pitched in 2017 because of injury. He pitched a handful of games in 2018. And 2019, he was trying to convert him to a reliever. He never got above A ball. And by 2019, he was the year where there was no minor leagues in 2020, he was out. And I feel for him. He was a number 2 overall pick by Miami. I feel for him because he was obviously talented enough that the Marlins took a stab. Carlos Rodon was available the very next pick by the Chicago White Sox. But had the Marlins not had the bad luck there, if they had drafted Rodon, if they had drafted Nola, if they had drafted Schwarber, could the fate of the Marlins with a number 1 overall pick in the middle of their team have been changed? Or would that number 1 overall pick just inevitably have been dealt off somewhere else? One of the interesting ones there is Trey Turner, who was drafted by the San Diego Padres. Now, you may not think of him as a pick of the Padres, but remember that he was traded in that absolutely bizarre, convoluted deal on June 14th, 2025. The Padres, I'm at baseballreference.com, single greatest website in the history of planet Earth. Joe Ross was sent to the Nationals. The Padres sent a bunch of prospects, including Jake Bowers, Rene Rivera, Burt Smith, to the Rays. The Rays sent everybody to the Padres. The Nationals sent a couple of minor leaguers and Steven Souza Jr. to the Rays, and the Padres wound up sending Trey Turner to the Nationals. And when the dust settled, the Nationals had Trey Turner, and the Nationals had their shortstop for the World Series champion in 2019 and got themselves the runner-up of the Rookie of the Year and a workhorse who got some MVP votes in 2020 and eventually was traded away to LA. But they got the guy who led the league in games played and stolen bases and was a tremendous player when they won the World Series. And Padres, if you had kept him, maybe you wouldn't have to spend the money on Xander Bogaerts. But again, this is part of it. I'm sure if we went back to 2014, I bet there were people praising the Marlins for their pick. I'm sure there were people jumping up and down for the Astros for their signing. And I bet there were some people saying that, oh man, Cubs shouldn't have drafted Schwarber, wrong thing. The analysis, I bet, was all over the map. Be interesting to see in 2034 where we're going. The amazing thing is I was doing a podcast in 2014. So what I'm saying is I'm going to be here a while. And don't do any analysis of how a team did here or there until 5 years from now. Do you know why? Because in the end, you really don't know. This episode of Locked On MLB is brought to you by Booking.com, or as I like to say, Booking.yeah. I've talked about this before. I love bringing it up. I went on a fabulous baseball trip earlier this year. Went to Buffalo. Buffalo's a beautiful city, in case you don't know that. And to Syracuse and to Cooperstown. Saw a baseball game at Buffalo, saw the Bisons play, saw the Syracuse Mets play, and obviously spent 2 glorious days in Cooperstown. And every place I stayed, there was a fabulous hotel for me. A great, old-fashioned, beautiful hotel right in downtown, beautiful Buffalo. Nice, safe hotel right nearby the campus at Syracuse, and a fabulous bed and breakfast, which was walking distance to the lake and to the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. Booked all those on Booking.com. From hotels that overlook the stadium to those fabulous beds and breakfasts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this baseball season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today at Booking.com on the site or on the Booking.com app. Booking.com. Booking.com. More like Booking.yeah. Hey, this is a reminder that Locked On has created the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. It's on YouTube and on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channel app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channel app. All right. Well, the first round of the draft ended, and Travis Bazzana to Oregon State went to the Cleveland. Chase Burns did not get drafted by the Rockies, got drafted by the Reds. Charlie Condon with the Rocks, Nick Kurtz with the A's, Hagen Smith with the Sox. We'll all find out about the effectiveness of all these draft picks later on, and be sure to tune in 2034 when we review them. What a weird day of games, by the way. I have mentioned my love of bunts. What I love about bunts is they make life unpredictable, and they sure made the Dodgers' life hell as the Tigers once again came back from behind against LA. LA's stumbling into the All-Star break. Not very good. By the way, stop using Craig Kimbrell in key games, okay? Because he's going to lose you key games. Keep that in mind, Orioles, as he let up a 3-run home run to Ben Rice, and the Orioles absolutely cooking the Orioles. And then Clay Holmes said, "Hold my beer." And yes, I know there was the bumble play at shortstop, and I know that Verdugo fell on his face in left field running. He misjudged the fly ball, and it was 2 embarrassing plays that could have ended that game for the Yankees, made it a clean sweep. But the Orioles had all those runners on base because Holmes let up a couple hit and walked everyone else. It's funny when you hear Yankee fans say their key need in the trade deadline is a closer, and they have an all-star closer. Life can be weird. I don't know what to tell you. I'll tell you who's come into the All-Star break red hot is Rafael Devers. Red Sox winning that game 5-4. To listen to Locked On A's, I talk about the fact that the Phillies took the day off, but the A's didn't. 18-3. The A's went to Philadelphia and won that series, and good for them. Completely surreal game took place in San Francisco, where Blake Snell remembered he was a Cy Young caliber pitcher and took a perfect game into the 7th inning, lost the perfect game, and then the Giants allowed the Twins to take the lead in the top of to tie the game in the top of the ninth, but Margot tripped and bumbled his way to third base, ran back, and so they couldn't take the lead. And then in the bottom of the ninth, Mike Yastrzemski, as my mom calls him, Mikey, got on base for the 4th time. He had a great game today, hit a ball into Triples Alley, and then the relay throw came home, and the second baseman, Lee, decided to be a hero and try to catch Mike Yastrzemski at third base, even though Yastrzemski was already standing on third base and celebrating, and the ball sailed over his head, and it was a game winner for the Giants. The Mariners could not take advantage of a Astros loss, as it was a Joe Adele hit a 3-run home run in the bottom of the 8th, and the Angels won that one 3-2. And neither the Diamondbacks nor the Padres could take advantage of the Mets loss. If they had won, we would have had a 3-way tie for the final wild card spot. The Blue Jays scored 6 runs in the 4th, and the Diamondbacks scored 7 runs in the 5th. It was a weird game, 8-7 final for the Blue Jays. So we're going into the All-Star break. And if the season ended today, there would be a lot of angry people. But going into the All-Star break, the Orioles, because they won that bizarre game against the Yankees, have first place by themselves. The 2 teams that would get the, I don't know if it's a reward or punishment of skipping the wild card series, getting the proverbial bye, would be Cleveland and Baltimore. And they would have home field advantage in the division series. The Mariners would play Boston, and the Yankees would play the Twins. Normally, the Yankees would salivate to play the Twins, but this is a different year. In the National League, the 2 teams that would take the wild card series off would be Philadelphia, who just lost the series to the A's, and the Dodgers, who have lost 7 of their last 10 games. The Brewers, who have also lost 7 of the last 10 games, would play the Mets, and every Met fan in the world will throw tomatoes at me and say, don't you feel stupid? And if that's the case, yes, I would feel stupid. And Atlanta would play St. Louis. And the Diamondbacks, Padres, and Pirates are all within a game and a half of a playoff spot. Right now, KC is 2 games out of a playoff spot there. So we're entering the All-Star break. I'm going to be continuing to do some shows. We'll talk a little bit about the Home Run Derby. I'm going to have on Ethan Smith of Locked On Pirates to talk about Paul Skeens getting the start. By the way, I can't remember if did I answer the trivia question about the team that got off to the worst start, went on to win the World Series? Well, Court Stowe got it right. He wrote the 2014 Boston Braves. It's the 1914 Boston Braves. But I think there was some shenanigans going on in that World Series. But we'll talk about that some other time. Today's trivia question is related to the draft. And it's simple. Who was the first person who was drafted number 1 overall? Because remember, the draft began in 1965. So in the June draft, who was the first player to be drafted number 1 overall to go on to win a league MVP? That's your trivia question. Put it right down here at Locked On MLB on YouTube or Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. We made it to the All-Star break. We're going to have some fun because the trade deadline is coming around the corner. Talking about the draft, a fabulous Sunday of games, and a well-needed break for some of these teams. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.